Good morning. My name is Steve Thomas. I'm an assistant professor at the Centre for Health Policy and Management at Trinity College in Dublin, and I've been very delighted to be able to be here in Cape Town and to talk a little bit about the Irish experience of moving towards universal health insurance, which we are doing so now, and some of the difficulties we're facing, and some of the implications of that for the journey that you're now about to be on. And it's quite interesting, really, that funnily enough, even though you might think a recession would be a horrible thing to have to go through in terms of a health system, actually, in some ways, it's actually been a blessing to us, which is a strange thing to say, because we've had an economic collapse, we've had horrendous unemployment increases. In many ways, the macroeconomic position hasn't been good. But what's actually happened through that is the health system has become much more efficient. And interestingly, we've been able to really lower our costs and increase our activity. And in fact, many of the hospitals now are becoming much more efficient than they were before. And it's almost like the whole recession process has really concentrated our minds. So of course, it's not a pleasant thing to have your salary cut by 20%, which I have, but at the same time, I actually think that there are sometimes opportunities in the heart of economic difficulties, and that might be one message to kind of think about. That actually, even though you may not be experiencing massive amounts of growth in the economy, sometimes that actually can help you focus a little bit more on the cost side, which is always a useful thing to do. The other thing I would say a recession has helped us do is to focus particularly on the need for reform. And it really has consolidated everyone's views that the current system just can't work. So what we've been looking at is the different options available, and it's really consolidated around two different models. One of which is the Dutch model of competing private insurers, and the other one is the sort of Taiwanese model, also the model that's being introduced in Vermont, in New England at the moment, which is around a single fund. And there's been a lot of debate about that. And I think from a technical point of view, the single fund looks probably like a better model to go with because of economies of scale, because it's simpler and more transparent. But the politicians have tended to go for the multiple funding model, the multiple insurer model, because they think it drives down costs, although that's I would kind of debate that. But also, I think because of the culture and context of where Ireland is, we've always been slightly more American-leaning than European-leaning. We've been a little bit more pro-private sector, and so the politicians, I think, see that as an easier sell. So I think there are two things to draw out of that. One is that there's a lot of technical evidence out there about different systems, but it really boils down to what the cultural setting is within the country and what fits with the ideology of people. So I think that's really important, because we can get carried away a little bit about what's happening in this country, what's happening in that country, but you've got to have something that works where you are. So I think I would really go with that. I mean, I sometimes call it the sausage theory of financing. Sausages are, you can never really tell what's in a sausage, so sometimes you've got to be careful. And sometimes with other systems, you can be kind of tasting the sausage and you don't really know what's in there. So you've got to be very careful about the different headlines, about what's out there, and just taking things from one country or another. So locally based solutions is I think critical. The other thing that we're now finding out is we've gone from the euphoria of committing ourselves to universalisation to the realisation that it's actually quite a long and difficult process. Whilst the headline is increasing access and changing the financing, at the same time, the way that works out is actually throughout the rest of the health system. And two particular constraints that we've been facing are around the workforce and around governance arrangements. So I think particularly we need to think, we've been challenged to think about how do we use our workforce better, how do we think about skill mix, delegation, substitution, so that we do things efficiently and don't rely on old ways. Also, we're challenged to really, with a universal health insurance model and a contracting model, to think very clearly about what governance support we need in those management, information systems, and you know, thinking through the whole support to making that transition from a taxation-based public system to a contracting universal health insurance system. That's quite a big shift. So that needs very careful thinking through from government side. It also needs very careful articulation and support and interaction between private hospitals, which will be there to compete for that, for contracts within that system, and the government. So I think on a kind of final word, what I'd probably say is that this is a bit like running up a down escalator. It's quite a difficult process. The transition is complex. You know, there are many forces that are acting against you. But I think the big thing is just to keep going, to keep persevering, to try and, you know, reduce your costs as much as possible, to understand that it will be a tricky process. It will take longer than you imagine. It will be hard work, but in the end you'll get there. So I think for us, I would say hang in there, you'll be okay.